Hey everybody, welcome to Away Games, the Chicago Cubs podcast. We are two comedians hosting. One of us is pretty close to Chicago right now. The other is home in New York. I'm Kevin McCaffrey. I'm in the Chicago area, and I'm here with Adam Mamawala. What's up, Adam?
How's it going, man? I am closer to Citi Field, so yuck.
Yeah, big time yuck. Big yuck review. Big yuck energy coming out of, I guess, northeastern Queens, but yeah. That's where that is. Yeah, I was talking to someone recently about, I think I went to the Cubs game on, I guess it would be last Friday.
Yeah.
Sat in the bleachers with my brother Patrick. The Cubs ended up winning 4-3, which was very nice. Offensive powerhouse Jason Heyward was really clutch with guys on base after Pedro Strop blew a 3-run lead, which is a real bummer because there are a lot of hat complaining assholes in the bleachers around us. So it really sucked for Strop to blow that game. Anyway, I was talking to the Uber driver on the way there, talking about stadiums, and he was commenting on yeah, I went to where the Mets play once, and that's the worst neighborhood I've ever seen. And I was like,
yeah,
it's a weird neighborhood for people who haven't been.
It is. I haven't really spent much time in Flushing, New York, other than going to the U.S. Open and going to Mets games. But it's like a weird mix of like chop shops and dim sum places.
Yeah, that really is all. It's just an incredible amount of cars that have been taken apart, just like surrounding that area. If your car has been stolen or you would like a stolen car, you should go to a Mets game, really knock out, kill a couple birds with a stone. There, it's a weird neighborhood. Anyway, Wrigleyville, I report, is more fun.
Still great.
So, still fun. Still had a good time. How's your week going?
It's okay. I think, I feel like, I guess last week we talked right before the All-Star game. I guess that was like as uneventful as All-Star games usually are. And our Cubs didn't really do much of anything, but I do really love I love the way they incorporate like doing the interviews during the game. That's a really, really cool thing.
It's a ton of fun. I'm a sucker for mic'd up anything, mic'd up or during the game stuff is, I think that's a very cool element they've
added. But any other thoughts on the All-Star game?
Not really. I caught bits and pieces. I mean, it was fine. As you tweeted from the @Away Games Twitter account, the Cubs went 0-for, so that, felt like it didn't bode well. But as we talk here, we're recording this on Tuesday before the Tuesday game. Won 3 out of 4 coming out of the break. So that's, it sucks that the Reds are invincible against the Cubs this year for some reason. But they swept the Pirates. Can't be too mad about it.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting about it, and this is what I was thinking about. So you remember in 2017, obviously the Cubs played even worse in the first half. And it was that same kind of feeling of like, okay, we really need to come out and win some games. And I was at that series in Baltimore where they had that crazy game where they were up 8-0, blew that lead,
right,
and then ended up winning 9-8. And Friday's game that you were at had a very similar feel, which is like
Absolutely.
You come out, you're playing great.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, gut punch, Marte ties the game. And you're like, oh boy, if we lose this game, this could really set a terrible tone for how this second half is going to go. Right. And then they end up, Heyward does what Heyward apparently does and gets a game-winning hit. And it's kind of off to the races. And I mean, this series overall against Pittsburgh was about as good as a series as they've had in recent memory, but then last night against the Reds, they're kicking the ball all over the infield and just look kind of listless again. So it's a little frustrating.
Sloppy dud. It's like the Reds have a spell they've cast on the Cubs somehow to make them just play like a bunch of dummies this year. But really the game I was at was the only close game really of the series, and Yu Darvish pitched great. So
he really deserved the win, but apparently it will never happen.
Nope, no decision Darvish. That is it. No matter how well or bad he pitches, usually it's just a no decision. But that was good to see. And I guess the big news right now, we're leading up to the universal trade deadline, the first time it's been like that in a long time at the end of this month, and the Cubs made a deal.
They did. Fare thee well, Mike Montgomery.
Mm-hmm. I can't remember a time where a guy got traded off the Cubs and everyone was like happier towards that person, I mean, maybe like when Derek Lee was traded to the Braves, but that was a different scenario because it's like, the Cubs weren't winning anything at that point, so it's just like freeing Derek Lee basically, and now it's sending Montgomery from good team to a bad team. But I think what's important to remember here is Montgomery requested a trade. He wanted to start. I think he showed over the past couple of years that he deserves a chance to start.
Absolutely.
So it's one of those things where it's like, I'm sad to see him go. And obviously he's always going to be in every montage for the rest of,
Oh, I mean, if he wants to continue making a living signing autographs until the day he dies, he'll be able to do it.
Yeah. So it's,
I mean, the fact of the matter is the Cubs needed a catcher because Contreras, unfortunately, is going to be on the shelf for, I guess, at least the 10 days with a foot injury of some sort, I guess, like a strained foot.
Strained arch or something. Yeah, it seems it's weird. It's not super clear because at first Contreras was limping a bit, and then there was talk that he'll probably play tomorrow, and then instead of that, not only is it not that, he's on the injured list, and they traded for a catcher. So it's like, wow, that's a big turnaround.
A strained arch sounds like some sort of hex that the Cardinals put on us for calling them boring.
Yes, yeah, that is. Yeah, it could be via Yachty. Yeah, Yachty Mr. Sensitive could have cast a spell. That's that X factor Yachty brings.
The old gateway to the West curse.
Gateway to the podiatrist for Willson. So yeah, but what was interesting is apparently even before the Willson injury, Theo said that they were talking to Kansas City about a deal for Maldonado.
Well, and hopefully they're also talking to Kansas City about a deal for Whit Merrifield.
Yeah, and the package it would take to land Merrifield, who is good, is a top-of-the-order guy, would fit great in a leadoff spot that the Cubs have not really had a great solution for. It would cost a lot for Merrifield. It would be a real messy package with a couple basically Kansas City has said they want 3 Major League ready players. Now, what is Major League ready exactly? I mean, we're assuming that's probably something like Ian Happ, Victor Caratini, Addison Russell maybe, and then prospects. It would take a big mess to get him. But with Theo saying that they were working on some kind of deal and with Maldonado involved, and then the injury sped it up, means there could be more coming, one way or another between these two teams.
Well, and I would have to look at Merrifield's contract status, but I think he's under team control for the next few years because I believe he signed an extension with Kansas City. So he could be a good fit in the sense of like the same way that Kimbrel fits in, where you have him for the next couple of years, where you're really looking at the next 2 to 3 years until I think it's the summer or was it 2021 when everybody's kind of like KB and all those guys could potentially be elsewhere. So you're looking at another 2 to 3 years here in this window, hopefully.
Yes, 2 to 3 years as the roster is currently constructed, sort of like the prime window. So with Merrifield, and again, this is a long shot that the Cubs would get Merrifield, and if we did, it would be if the Cubs did, it would be a package that would hurt. But he's signed through 2023. He's 30 years old right now. He's signed through 2023. Basically, we're looking at an average of a little over $4 million a year, around $5 million a year on average so it's not a lot of money.
He signed like a David Bodie deal, basically.
Yeah, exactly. So, so long shot, but still, it'll be fun to see what's going on there. And it as with every trade season over the past few years, I'm both, it's like that Jesse Spano Saved by the Bell clip where she's like, I'm so excited, I'm so scared when she takes the drugs. That's kind of it. Like, I'm excited to see what they do, but I'm also scared to lose, a name we might love.
Well, and as always, any trade deadline, your opinion on it is going to change based on how that team ends up doing.
Right, which isn't necessarily fair, but that's how it works.
Well, exactly. I mean, if the Cubs lose in 2016, it is driving us absolutely nuts right now to see Torres doing what he's doing for the Yankees, more so than it maybe already is.
Right, totally. Yeah, it's it's interesting, and that this is the real first real domino to fall this trade season. And let's give an update. I basically looked up some facts about Maldonado. Obviously, he's a defense first catcher, 32 years old, won the Gold Glove in 2017. One thing that should be pointed out He is not good offensively. He's bad offensively. This is a no bat guy.
He hit like 220?
I mean, he hasn't had an OPS over 700 in the past 5 years. This is like his WRC plus is at 73 this year, which is also his career WRC plus, which means he's 27% worse than average for the league. So that's not good. He's no offense from this guy. But I think
you start Caratini most days right now, and you're back.
Right. And I like it. This makes sense as a guy to have on this team. Montgomery and Maldonado's only under contract this year. Montgomery was under contract for another 2 after this, which makes me feel like, again, this could be the first part of a larger deal that might be announced as separate deals, but might kind of all be one thing together. But as far as defense goes, I feel like Maldonado is the rep of being an amazing framer. And he is the best pitch framer on this staff, but he only ranks 33rd in the league right now by that stat. He ranks 4th in blocking, 18th in throwing, basically, according to Baseball Prospectus's catching stats, which I find hard to believe anyway. I mean, basically, they think pitch framing is worth like 40 runs, like basically. So they just overrate everything, I think. So I have a tough time trusting their catcher stats over at BP. But that's what we've got to go off right now.
So how will you remember Mike Montgomery?
I think you put it well, Adam. He hit that bomb in Atlanta, right?
Yeah.
that's
first thing that comes to mind for me.
Yeah, he hit that homer in Atlanta, and boy, that was unexpected. And then I guess after that, he got Michael Martinez out, and that was cool.
Well, it's interesting to think though, like what would his, like, if CJ just gets an extra out and Montgomery never comes into that game, what do people feel right now? I think probably not really much of anything.
No, I don't think. I think because then basically he's like, what if Glendon Rush was on good Cubs teams? It just
and in terms of his place on that 2016 team, like he's like your pitcher's version of like a Matt Caesar or Chris Coughlin. Like he's like someone who was there and you remember him, but not someone who like you have a specific image of. Right.
Yeah, and I really thought, I was a big supporter of Montgomery getting time as a starter more than the Cubs really gave him a shot. Honestly.
He was great last year.
Yeah, he had a really great run in the middle of the year last year as a starter, and he's a weird guy where his stuff just makes more sense as a starter than it does as a reliever. Certainly more sense than it makes to have him going left on left as a specialist, which is just.
Well, hopefully Ned Yost understands that more than Joe Madison.
It would be wild if he did, but he might. Yeah, because Montgomery, this is a case where he wanted to go somewhere else to start. The Cubs dealt him. Montgomery's starting on Friday. Like, he's going directly into the starting rotation for Kansas City, so good for him, as you say, fare thee well, Mike Montgomery. And I think it's sad to see him go, but also, and I do think there was more in him than we saw. Obviously, he's been bad this year, but he's always had a weird role, and it's been tough to really commit to one kind of preparation for him.
It's got to be super hard to be in that position, especially when you want to start.
Yeah, totally. Never knowing whether you're coming in for one hitter or whether you're going to go for 4 innings, on every day. It's a weird thing, but yeah, I think it is a trade that makes sense, and we finally we might have pitchers who can fill that Montgomery role in the bullpen, what he was actually being used as a long man. Alzolay, we will probably see up again before the end of the year. Chatwood's in there. There's a pitcher at AAA, Colin Ray, who is a pitcher who we might be seeing later this year, who is killing it at AAA, who is sort of a prospect who stalled out, and the Cubs got him, and he might be a late breakout guy. So that's another name to keep an eye on. Yeah.
So beyond that, looking ahead a little bit, we've got 2 more against Cincinnati, and then 3 against San Diego, and then you go on the road for 9 after that. So, I mean, obviously 3-1 to start the homestand is great, but you'd love to get the next 2 against Cincinnati, and then if you can get 2 out of 3 from San Diego, that's a 7-2 homestand, which would be exactly what they need right now.
100%. Yeah, and it really does have to be that good. And 3 out of 4 is a good start. It looks like Alec Mills is going to be making a spot start for the Cubs. Another sort of, AAA, late 20s AAA guy, good control pitcher. He came up for a couple games last year too. But yeah,
when is he starting?
I believe it might even be. Is it Tuesday night? So this might be in the past. Let's see.
Oh, but it's tonight.
Yeah, it might be. Another note about Tuesday night's game. Yeah, so Alec Mills at this point in the past started Tuesday and threw a no-hitter against the Reds, I'm sure. And the first pitch, however, before Alec Mills throws a pitch, the first pitch at this Cubs game will be thrown out by the man who caught the loose alligator in Chicago. I don't know if you
I don't know about this.
Chance,
please tell me everything.
Chance the Snapper, I believe people were calling him. It was a alligator that got loose in I want to say Humboldt Park, but it was like the lead story on the news for days. There was this alligator just chilling. Humboldt Park alligator. This guy was just chilling out in Chicago, and he was caught. And the man who caught him is threw out the first pitch Tuesday night at Wrigley. So
well. How about that?
How about that for pitching news?
Arguably, not even arguably, certainly more famous than Alec Mills at this moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, as far as accomplishments go, the accomplishment is more well known than Alec Mills to this point. But
I mean, if you had told me that somebody who caught an alligator was going to throw out a first pitch, I would have definitely assumed it was at a Marlins game.
Yeah, and that would have.
That is not a Cubs game story.
It doesn't seem like it. Although maybe at Marlins games, just like, everyone's caught an alligator down here, So just like that's just part of the culture. You catch a gator, that's what we do. But up here it's special. So,
that is very odd. So beyond Merrifield, and obviously everyone's talking about whether it's Will Smith or a different lefty reliever,
right?
Are there any guys that you're thinking about or that you've heard anything interesting about that you feel like would be a good fit as we get into these last couple weeks in July?
Well, it's in terms of a lefty reliever, there's another guy on Kansas City named Jake Diekman who's been connected to the Cubs a few times, but his results have not been great. He's a big strikeout guy, but he's one of those dudes, almost like how Yu Darvish has been pitching for most of his Cubs tenure, where the stuff seems good, he misses bats, and yet it doesn't turn out well. So, it's sort of like, I don't know, I'm not super excited, but we might end up seeing, but Jake Diekman might be a guy to keep an eye on. And then otherwise, it seems like actually fixing top of the order. It's annoying to talk about the leadoff thing, because just put the best hitters up there, but the Cubs really haven't solved that leadoff spot. Schwarber's hitting for power, but he's not getting on base as much as you'd like. But he's up at 20 homers again. Kyle's still
he's getting on base. He's taking his walks, but I think he's batting like 220, 225. So
the average is way down. I think some names I've seen floated out there. Eric Sogard, that's not sexy. D. Gordon, people have talked about. D. Gordon's fun because he's fast, but he's not an on base guy. I don't really have interest in a one.
Yeah, unless we're going to start playing by the Atlantic League rules and he can steal first. I don't know if that's a good fit.
Yes, exactly. Which I just saw that the first steal of first in the Atlantic League.
My favorite thing about that is like picturing like some dad who like really wants to like teach his son how baseball is played, wanting to bring him to Atlantic League games to be like, this is just a waste of my time.
I'm now having to unlearn this information from my child. Otherwise, he's going to go out on the field and just start running to third base first, and who the hell knows what else. It's as far. I think generally speaking, just top of the order guys. But what does that even mean? It's hard to think of someone out there who'd be a really good fit in that very specific way.
Do you think the Cubs have a real shot at Will Smith, or are there going to be teams who need a closer more than the Cubs do who will offer more for him?
Weirdly, the Brewers' bullpen, after being amazing last year, has been terrible.
But also their starters have been bad.
Oh, yeah.
The Brewers are a 500 team right now.
Right, exactly. And I have heard the Brewers connected to Will Smith, and they have a decent farm system, so I think that I would not be surprised to see them go get Will Smith. So I think that might be the Cubs' biggest competitor there.
Has Giants Will Smith faced Dodgers Will Smith yet?
Ooh, good question. I mean, and if
they play each other enough.
They play each other enough, and it's a pitcher and a catcher, right? So you could have an all Will Smith battery one day, you know.
That's great.
That does sound great. You could also you could have a Chirinos to Chirinos too. There's with Yanni and Robinson. Yeah. So I don't know. Are there any trade targets out there you're thinking of that besides?
Well, I mean, I'm in general, just as a baseball fan, I'm kind of intrigued to see where certain people go. Like, are the Giants going to trade Bumgarner, and if so, where does he end up? But no, I mean, I think it's mostly those same guys that we've talked about for the Cubs. But I feel like Epstein is being very cautious about what he's saying right now in terms of his willingness to make moves like that. But then at the same time, it's what will he need to see in the next couple weeks is going to make or break the decision in terms of how much he's willing to give up. Sure, if the Cubs win 10 games in a row, then yeah, it's more obvious. But what's the gray area there? If they go 6-4 over the next 10, what does that tell him?
Right, and if the way the Central's been lately, you go 6-4 over the next 10 and increase your division lead by a game somehow.
Right.
You know, so it's I don't know. I mean, I think it's just what the Cubs are right now is what Theo's going to have to, there's not going to be some big light bulb moment. It doesn't seem like in the next week or two. So, this is what it is. So what do we do with it? I don't know. It would be nice to get Ben Zobrist back. I'll tell you what else we didn't talk about. But it would be nice to call Ian Happ up.
Didn't he homer twice yesterday?
Homered twice, and not only did he homer twice, but I watched the video. He homered opposite field, hit swinging lefty both times, opposite field on curveballs off the plate. It was really weird looking pitches to homer on the way he did. And he's just been tearing it up over the last 15 games. And he's alternated back and forth. Now, there was on Bleacher Nation had a breakdown of Ian Happ's 15-game basically breaking down the season by 15-game chunks. And he's basically been bad, very good, sort of bad, average, terrible, amazing. So, right now,
is that your editorializing, or is that literally what the article says?
That's not what the article says. That's me looking at the numbers and then interpreting in a less wonky way than just reading what the numbers are. But I'll tell you, over the last 15, and again, we get this breakdown from Bleacher Nation, slashing 323, 421, 585. WRC plus of 145, which means that 45% better than the league average in the Pacific Coast League, which is a heavily offensive league. So 45% over league average there is huge. And one thing that has stayed steady over the last 45 games, he's walking close to 15% of the time, which is great. He is still striking out, in the high 20%, which is ostensibly part of the reason they sent him down was to work on cutting down swing or miss. But this is,
Well, here's the counterpoint, though. Yeah. If he's playing well in AAA right now, and the Cubs are considering trading him, is it more advantageous to keep him hot in AAA so that you can trade on potential versus calling him up and he goes 0 for 10 with 8 strikeouts when he comes back to the big league team?
I mean, it could be, and also it could be a weird thing where I don't exactly know what his service time is. So while you're keeping him down in AAA, he's not racking up service time, not getting closer to free agency. And it definitely holds more value in a trade to be getting a guy with less service time accrued. So
right. I mean, I think you and I would agree that if we could just do bring Happ up, send Russell down, that would be what we would want. Cause I don't think, I guess I would have to look at the numbers, but I feel Rabella's been getting hits and he's okay defensively. Russell needs to stop fucking running into Bryant. I don't know if you saw that last night, but on a pop-up.
I didn't. Did it again?
Yeah, I mean, it's a ball that's clearly the right fielder's because it's a significantly easier play to come in.
Right.
And even though Bryant, I assume, was calling him off, Russell runs out and grabs it and runs into him.
Yeah, leave Chris Bryant alone. Chris Bryant, who's putting up numbers right in line with his MVP season and most of his other seasons. Bryant really feeling lately... it's maybe the most underappreciated Cub. just in terms of general vibe, I feel like people get mad at Brian all the time and think he's not, a superstar. And he's been very good all the time, except for, last year, basically. Yeah. And even then he was good. It just, he's basically back to what we expected his normal would be, which is a really great player. So that's, thankfully.
Well, and I'll tell you this too. I'm gonna make a prediction here that we are very close to a Rizzo tear.
Oh man, I hope so.
He has not homered, I think, in like a month.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, sometime in the next couple weeks, he's going to go on one of those like 5 homers in a week sort of runs.
I can't wait. And his numbers are very good on the year. And I feel like he's been using the opposite field against that shift more lately. Yeah. But yeah, I'm ready for a good old fashioned Rizzo, just friggin' bomb fest for sure. But yeah, as you said, if we were doing it, we would love to swap Happ down for Russell up. It's weird that performance matters for Ian Happ, but it doesn't matter for Addison Russell. I don't know why that's the case, but we'd love to do that. But it will be weird. I mean, Ian Happ is definitely going to be one of the names asked about over when we're talking trade rumors over the next couple weeks. So it'll be interesting to see. And I think there is still a good chance that he, as you say, will be kept down in AAA until that trade deadline, which continues our frustration with the Cubs not playing their best 25 players at the major league level. Yeah.
Yep.
So
you got any other Cubs stuff?
I do not. You got any other Cubs or non-Cubs stuff?
I mean, the main non-Cubs thing in the past week since we talked is the Angels throwing a combined no-hitter was unbelievable.
Yeah, that was, and it was.
That's like one of the coolest things I've seen in sports in recent memory.
Absolutely. It was, I'm sure if you're listening to this, you probably are aware by now, but basically Tyler Skaggs, who passed away suddenly, Angels pitcher, basically every player on the Angels wore his jersey for a night, and they threw a combined no-hitter that night. One pitcher threw 2 innings, and then former Cub Felix Pena went 7 innings, and they no-hit the Mariners. Trout homered in the first inning, and they never looked back. And they left. I mean, the image of them leaving the Skaggs jerseys on the mound and walking away.
That got me.
Just get out of here with this. It was insane. It was
Skaggs' mom threw a perfect strike.
Yeah, she brought the heat.
Or Heaney or whatever his name is. Yeah. He was like his best friend. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
That's one of those things where you're like, if somebody came up with that as like a storyline, you'd be like, that's a bit contrived.
It's a bit much, bit on the nose. It's Angels on the pitching mound as opposed to Angels in the outfield. But that was it was nice to have just a baseball story that everyone agreed was cool. Everyone's just like, hey, this is good. Everyone likes this.
Well, and they alluded to it, but obviously Justin Bour is on the Angels, and they were playing the Mariners, and Gordon is on the Mariners, and like that's got to be pretty heavy after having gone through what they did with Jose Fernandez a few years ago and the emotions of that game to then have to be part of something like this.
Yeah, D. Gordon's been part of a lot of emotional baseball.
It's crazy
for sure. Yeah,
but I mean, it's been quite a year for the Angels. I feel like in a year where they've been like pretty mediocre between like, Pujols going back to St. Louis and what that whole weekend was like, and obviously everything in a much sadder way with Skaggs recently. It's quite a year over there. But otherwise, I think that's mostly it. Hopefully, the next time we talk, it will be after a really good homestand. Because I got to tell you, especially after winning the first 3 games, if the Cubs come out and basically, split these 6 games against Cincinnati and San Diego, you're probably not feeling great about that. I guess the 6-3 homestand isn't bad, but it should be better.
Right, it should be, and the schedule gets a lot harder. I mean, it gets a lot harder team-wise, but also, as you said, it's a 9-game road trip after this, and if you start one of those long road trips bad, they can really spiral, it seems like. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, the Cubs have 3 in San Francisco, so it would be a cool situation to have the old jersey swap if the Cubs trade for Will Smith while we're out there.
Totally.
But 3 in San Francisco, 3 at Milwaukee, and 3 at St. Louis. So those games towards the end of the month are going to be very interesting to watch. And I mean, it's this happens every year, but it's like all of a sudden you look at the calendar and you're like, we're not all that far from the end of the year.
No, it's coming up. I mean, at this point, it's basically 2 months and a smidge, it's, 2 months and a week, more or less.
Before you know it, it'll be late August and we'll be chopping up cars and eating dim sum over by Citi Field.
Hell yeah. Getting ready for it when the Cubs finally come to our home.
Hopefully I'll get the hookups again this year for some fancy ass seats. So
yeah,
we can
let's do it.
chill with Elizabeth Moss. Huge Cubs fan.
Yeah, that's
star
right.
Of The Handmaid's Tale.
Perfectly. Hell yeah! All right, I think that's everything we got for this week, right?
I think so.
Cool. Awesome.
Follow us at Away Games Pod on Twitter and Instagram. And you got a Kevin McCaffrey plug over there?
Not really. I mean, I guess if you're in the Champaign, Illinois area, I'm going to be headlining in Champaign, Illinois. I believe at the Soma Lounge on Friday, July 19th. I don't know what day it is, but Friday this week, I will be headlining in Champaign, Illinois. The first time I've been there for stand-up purposes. So I'll be doing that. That's the only plug I got. And then,
if you need to drink champagne, make sure to buy it at Binny's Beverage Depot, the official champagne provider of your Chicago Cubs.
They should. I mean, it is embarrassing to not be sponsored by Binny's. If you just talk about the Cubs at all, we should all automatically be sponsored by them. But yeah. Oh, the last thing I have to say, Jason Heyward has 15 homers. How fun is that?
I'm into it.
Yeah.
And he also kind of pimped that homer a couple days ago. That was great.
And it was the kind of homer that it feels like you rarely see from Heyward. It's that pull power where it always looks good off the bat, but until this year, it never really carried. And he hit
Thank God for those juiced balls, baby.
Hell yeah, juiced balls. And then when Heyward's striking out, now he's breaking bats over his knee. This is a new man. So I love it. That's been fun. Thank you, Jason. Thanks for listening, everybody. At Away Games Pod on Twitter, Instagram, everything, and we will catch you next Wednesday.